Hello and welcome to another video. We are starting a new series of episodes, all based on the 101 horror books to read before you're murdered. So this is a book that has been released by Sadie Hartman, who is known as Mother Horror over on Instagram. So I picked up this book. It's absolutely brilliant. So it basically gives 101 books to read that are horror books. And I really want to get back into reading a lot more horror, so I thought this would be perfect to work my way through. So we're going to start with the first book on here, which is in the paranormal category under haunted houses, and it is The Grip of It. So I'll show you this page. I'm not going to show you anything else in the book, for obvious reasons, otherwise I'm just showing everything on here, which is not what we want to do. So this is a book where it's a couple, Julie and James. They moved to an urban house and they're trying to make a new start. My lips aren't actually blue. It's just this lighting, by the way. I've just noticed it looks like I've got pen or something on my lips. It's just the lighting, really bad. So the house is at the edge of a dense forest. They are having struggling with their relationship as well. It's one of those sort of books where it's kind of like marital secrets, it's kind of eerie, it's, creepy woods. You've got a lot of things going on with it, and this is the book. So I managed to purchase this via eBay. It's The Grip of It by, is it Jack Dempsey, you say the name? So it's meant to be a chilling, so it just basically says on here, a chilling literary horror novel. The Grip of It tells the story of Julie and James, a young couple haunted by their new home. The move, prompted by James's penchant for gambling, his inability to keep his impulses in check, is quick and seamless. Both Julie and James are happy to leave behind their usual haunts and start fresh, but the house, which sits between lake and forest, has plans for the unsuspecting couple. So that's all I really need to know going in. So it's definitely a haunted house vibe. So we're starting off this episode with this book. We are going to read this and we are going to see how I get on with it, and I reckon this is going to be, a high rated book for me. I remember this being everywhere when it came out. When did it come out? In 2019. Yeah, I remember it being pretty much everywhere when it first came out, and it is on quite a lot of horror recommendation lists as well. So I'm really looking forward to this. I do love a haunted house. So yeah, this is the start of a new series. Like I said, we are going to be reading 101 horror books, starting with this one. So let's get started. So let's try and give some sort of update on this. I am on page 94. I am dressed, by the way. I've had to put my hoodie on because it got a bit chilly. But yeah, I'm on page 94 of this. It's really, really difficult to explain this book. It's so difficult. I spent a lot of time just not really understanding it or getting what the author was trying to do with the writing and all of that jazz. But I've just read what the author of this book wrote about this book. That makes sense. To just kind of get a bit of an idea. Okay, so we're following Julie and James. They move into a house. So they lived in this urban place before. They've moved to a rural place, this house that's on the edge of this forest, and weird things start happening, but they kind of seem to be aimed more towards Julie. So for instance, a stain or something appears on the walls in the house and she gets the same shape as a bruise on her body. There seems to be some weird things starting to happen in this house, and there's something odd about the neighbour that they're trying to figure out, and at the same time, they're trying to piece their relationship back together. They're working on the relationship because James was a gambler. There's a lot of trust issues between them because of it. So they're working on the relationship as well as trying to figure out what the hell is going on with this house. Now we have dual point of view. So it goes between each chapter, it goes between James's point of view and Julia's point of view. So at some points, it's their point of view on the same thing that's happened. And it's basically each of their take on what is happening in this house, but it's very much a slow burn. So some of the chapters I kind of feel they're only like 1 or 2 pages long. I kind of feel like the chapters are too short to really get a proper understanding of what that particular character is thinking about a certain situation. So I'm kind of like unsure about the writing style and about how the author has chosen to lay this out. I don't know whether it works being 1 chapter per person and constantly switching between the two. I'm not so sure. I kind of feel like, obviously, if they did it where it was all one person's point of view and then we had the second person's point of view, it would be very much repetition type of thing. So I kind of feel like the author's obviously done it to know, so you know that it's obviously about the same incident, but it's a different point of view. It's not come back to it at a later point, I suppose. I don't know, it's a very difficult one. I'm not 100% sure exactly what is going on. I don't understand whether it doesn't feel like a ghost. It doesn't feel like a haunting. It doesn't feel like a haunted house. And I kind of feel like that's because of the lack of description. I feel like if the author had gone all out on describing the house and doing, you know, this really good description of both the house, of these 2 people, of exactly what is happening at the moment, I kind of feel like I would be more immersed in the story and I feel like it would create a better atmosphere. But at the moment, it's all very, I don't know, not a lot of information given about the house. It's not playing on the atmosphere. Okay, I'm not finding it that creepy. There's like little creepy elements here and there, but then the characters aren't fully likable. I just can't get my head around how this has been written. So I had to basically look in here as to why it was recommended in here. It does say a part in here, so I'm just going to read it. I'm not going to do this with every single book that is recommended in this book because obviously I want people to go out and buy this. I think it's absolutely brilliant, this book. But just because I'm struggling with this a little bit, I kind of had to read again why this was recommended to kind of like get it into my brain a little bit. It does say on here, let's just read some of this, okay? So Julie and James leave the urban landscape and head for a more rural address, moving into a new house at the edge of a dense forest. They bring with them big expectations for a change of scenery to inspire a fresh start for their struggling relationship. Almost immediately, strange things begin to happen. And it is kind of immediate in this book. Jamesy uses a back and forth, his and hers narrative to keep readers guessing about what's going on as both Julie and James seem to have different experiences. The chapters are succinct, often leaving readers on a cliffhanger. The pages fly by like a little movie in the reader's mind. I love the way the author leaves room for the audience to develop theories. So that is kind of really what's happening. It's as a reader, it's down to your own perspective. It's how you take it in. That makes sense. Now it says here, perhaps the most rewarding part of this book is that no 2 readers will have the same experience. There'll be paranormal skeptics who run with clues suggesting one thing, while other readers will lean into the unexplained phenomena to propose a different reality. Either way, my recommendation would be to buddy read this with a friend to compare notes and theories along the way. Now, I'm not buddy reading this, but now it's started to make sense as to why the writing is the way it is, why it's such a strange book. And it says, those who are not fans of ambiguity might feel the need for concrete answers, but it's the psychological disturbance of the unknown that makes this book one of my favourites in the subgenre. So I know, and I have seen, because I had to look at some reviews as well on Goodreads, I know that there's no answers to the ending of this book. And the whole idea is that it's the reader that makes up the decision as to what they think this book is about and what is happening, which sounds like an amazing concept. It sounds amazing. However, I don't think I'm brainy enough to think this one through. I kind of like the author to give me the answers. I love it when the ending to a book is, sealed Signed, sealed and delivered. I love it when it's all makes sense. So I have a feeling this is not going to make sense when I finish it. So there's a part of me that's like really intrigued by this. And I'm thinking it's quite a clever way of writing this type of book, this horror, haunted house type book. I'm not seeing much haunted house, if I'm completely honest. I don't really see this as much of a haunted house story. I don't know. Obviously, there's things happening, but it's so brief descriptions that we're getting. Now we've got to the point where they're just looking into what's happening with the neighbour, and that there's possibly something odd about the house that they're living in. I have a feeling though that we're not going to get concrete answers, and I don't think they're going to find out everything. I think it's going to be bits and pieces that we're going to learn. I don't know. I feel like this is a really clever book, but maybe too clever for me. I kind of feel like I'm intrigued about what's going on, but at the same time, I'm just like, why are we switching so quickly between? I don't know whether it's to like make it more fast paced. I don't know whether it's a pace thing. So short chapters, get you reading, leaving each chapter on a slight little cliffhanger to get you reading the next one. I don't know whether it's something to do with that the author is doing. So I'm intrigued, and you know, I want to know what's going on. I want them to figure out what's happening with this house and with their weird ass neighbour. But at the same time, I'm just very confused because it switches so quickly. You're just starting to get the idea of something, and then the perspective changes again because it switches point of view. And I feel like they're kind of having different experiences, and there are some weird things happening. Like they're having out-of-body experiences, they're having things happen to them which they think has happened, but it's something else that's happening. Like at one point he thinks he's sitting in a cave when he's actually sat on a chair on his porch, for instance, that sort of thing. So there's some weird out-of-body, like weird things going on, which again I'm intrigued about. So yeah, it's a sort of book that's very difficult to explain. It's very difficult to get my full thoughts on it, but I'm not yet 100 pages. I'm not yet halfway. So I don't know whether it's going to be a case that I'm going to get more involved and more invested in it. And start to love this book, or what. It's a very complicated book. I think it's probably more like a 3-star at the moment, but I think that could change. And it could go either way. So it can either, depending on this ending, I know that the ending is meant to be open, and I know that as a reader, you're meant to take from it as you will, and that everyone is going to have a different perspective. I don't think any two people will have the same results when reading this book or the same thoughts when reading this book, because I think it completely depends on how you feel with the paranormal and things like that, as to whether you believe there's something paranormal going on, or whether it's something to do with them psychologically, or what. I don't know. It's a very strange book. It's very difficult to talk about, and it's very complicated to get my thoughts in order with it. But I'm intrigued. So I'm going to obviously keep reading because, you know, I want to find out. But I just know that it's just a very strange concept. And I'm not 100% sure whether I like this whole switching between two point of views so quickly. If the chapters are a bit longer, then maybe, yeah. But yeah, that's my thoughts so far. So yeah, anyway, it's a Monday, so I'm going to my parents for dinner in a bit. I think it's coming up to 5 o'clock, just coming up to 5 o'clock. So I wanted to give my opinion so far on this. Yeah, just near 5 o'clock. Yeah, give my opinion on this so far. I'm going to go to my parents for dinner. We might watch a horror film, but I'll take this with me, because if we're not watching a horror film, then I'll read a bit more of this, because I think it might be only just me and my mum today. I don't think my dad's there. My sister doesn't come to family night anymore, so yeah, I think it will just be me and my mum. So I might be getting reading done, or we might watch a horror film, we'll see. And then when I get back later, I need to separate my pumpkin seeds, because we carved pumpkins yesterday and it's all still in a bowl, and I want to separate the pumpkin seeds, which I need to do tonight so that I can bake them and have them as a snack throughout the rest of the week. So that is the plan. I haven't had time to do it whilst working because I can't really stay off the phone for long enough to do it. So I'm going to do that when I get home later, because pumpkin seeds are an amazing snack. I love them. Paul doesn't like them, but I really do. So yeah, I'm going to be doing that. And then maybe after that, I might get some more reading done before Paul gets home. He doesn't get home till about 11 usually on a Monday. So we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, difficult one to review and give my thoughts on at the moment. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah. So, ready. Hello, I'm on here with a bit of a reading update, and yes, I'm wearing my hoodie again because it's cozy to chuck this on in the afternoons when it gets a bit chillier and I'm working from home, so it's back on. But yeah, I wanted to give an update on this. So my last update, I was saying it was like 3 stars. I wasn't understanding the writing style. I didn't understand why it was jumping between the 2 point of view so much, and I've gone past the 100 pages. I'm now on page 235. And I can assure you that after the first 100 pages, it all starts making sense, and it just makes you realise that the author's done a really clever thing with this writing style. So we're kind of, as the reader, trying to work out whether it is Julie to blame or James to blame, whether it could be both of them, whether it's supernatural, whether there's something odd about them, whether it's something to do with the neighbour, all of this. So this is what we're kind of thinking as a reader. Now, the reason why it jumps between the 2 point of views is to make us as the reader feel quite unhinged and uneasy, and we start questioning everything as well. Because it jumps so quickly, you start getting an idea of what you think is happening, and then your perspective completely changes because you're then seeing the point of view from someone else, and it's like, oh, it must be the other one then. So they're both experiencing things inside this house, and they're both blaming the other one, and they're both not really understanding whether it's supernatural. They don't want to believe it's supernatural. They want to find like an alternative reason as to why this is happening to them. And yeah, you can really understand why the writing style has been chosen this way, because where it jumps around, it is making you kind of question, like, well, what the hell is going on? There's no answers. There's a lot of questions, no answers, because we're kind of just not really sure what's going on ourselves as the reader. And I'm starting to realise now that this is actually really cleverly written. And yeah, it's just really clever. I'm very impressed. So I went from thinking, oh yeah, this is just a 3-star read. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not very invested in it because I'm just not loving the writing style and the way that the author has chosen to do this jump between characters and point of view. Now it's all making sense as to why the author has chosen to do this, and it just makes you feel very unsettled, and it makes you question your own thoughts and what you think is happening, and it just brings up a lot of questions. Yeah, it's just really, really clever. I'm actually really impressed. I wouldn't say it's a 5-star read because there was that whole first 100 pages where I just didn't really get it. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the hype. I wasn't really invested. But now, past those first 100 pages, now I'm used to the writing style. Now I can see why it's done that way. I'm now very much enjoying this. It's, you know, a book which I would say is enjoyable because it is it makes you feel very uneasy reading this. There's still a lot of questions, and I know that this is a bit of an open ending. I've heard it has a bit of an open ending so the reader can interpret their own ending, as it were. And obviously nobody has the same as someone else, like ideas and realizations about this book. So I know that people take it differently. So some people will think of it all supernatural. Some people think it's them two going against one another in like this domestic thriller psychological thing. In all honesty, I can't even tell you. I've only got probably about 60 pages, less than 60 pages. And I can't really tell you what I think is going on. I can't really tell you whether, I personally, I like to think that it is all supernatural and that there is something in that house that doesn't want them to be there and it's doing it to them. But I can see why there is like this open ending and there is this question as to whether it could just be a psychological thing and it's just them two battling against one another because, you know, their relationship is failing. And yeah, it's very clever because it makes you question a lot of things and it makes you not really understand what the hell is going on, but that's for a reason. You're meant to not know what's going on. It's really cleverly done. So yeah, I'm enjoying this now. I don't think I'm going to finish this before work because it's already 5:15. So I'm going to read a little bit more. I just got to sort my post out. So I'm going to read a little bit more. I then have to go and do the food shop. And then once I'm back from doing the food shop, we'll have dinner. And I might be able to just sit and read this evening, depending on, I think Paul might be in the garage. If he's in the garage, then I'll be reading this evening. If he decides that he's not working in the garage today, then we'll probably watch a film or TV show or something like that. But it's all going to be after I've done the food shop and we've had dinner. So I will decide then. But I'm definitely going to check in next once I'm finished. Hello, I have reading update. I have now finished The Grip of It by Jack Dempsey. I'm guessing it's Dempsey, how you pronounce the surname. I'm sorry if I've got that wrong. Okay, so I'm going to go with 4 stars for this. It's a really difficult book to describe as well. All I would say is don't go into this thinking you're going to get all of the answers by the end, because the ending is very open and it's down to each individual reader's interpretation of what has happened and why it's happened and what the truth is and what is psychological. I feel like this book is probably horror with the hint of supernatural, where you're guessing, you're kind of thinking if this is supernatural or not. But it's also like a psychological thriller with like a bit of a domestic noir. Like there's obviously this couple that have a lot of marriage problems and relationship problems, and they're basically moving to this house in the rural countryside almost, which is right next to a creepy forest, and the whole idea is that they want to work on the relationship. So there's these domestic issues as well involved, as well as it being a psychological thriller and as well as having hints of supernatural horror. So it's all kind of like mashed up into this book, and the whole time you're going through the book you're kind of questioning whether it is supernatural or whether it is psychological or whether it's someone playing a hoax to try and get rid of them. There's a lot of questions and nothing really gets answered by the end. Now that's not really a spoiler as such. I think it's quite a well-known thing about this book, that the ending is kind of very open and it depends on what you believe has occurred throughout the book. Will just depend on how you take the ending, really. It's a very clever book when I think about it. I know I said this in the last update, how I was starting to realise why the author had chosen this writing style, and I just have to say again, it is clever, and I gave it 4 stars because I did end up really enjoying this. However, I mean, it would be brilliant if the ending was tied up, but at the same time, I do have all these questions, but I think it's open because then that's making the reader continue to think about this book long after they finished reading this book, because you're going to keep going back to it and being like, well, when this point happened, was it because of this, or was it actually a ghost, or was it the husband, kind of thing. That's the idea of it. So you're constantly questioning what's going on, and you're constantly questioning on who you actually believe and whose account you actually believe. So yeah, a very cleverly written book that I would definitely recommend, but obviously make sure you're aware that there are like confusing elements to it and there's a lot of questions. Now the next book in the 101 horror books to read is The Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig, but I have already read this. I read this year, and I gave it 3.5 stars. No, I didn't read it this year. I read it last year, last October. I gave it 3.5 stars because last year I was doing 0.5 stars. This year I'm not. So thinking about it now, it would be a 4-star as well. So I thought I would just quickly, briefly mention this as well because it is the next book in our 101 horror books. So this is following Nathan and Maddie. They are a married couple. They decide to go and move to the house that Nathan had grown up in, and he had like a very abusive father, and they end up taking their son. Does it mention what the son's name is? It's completely gone out of my head. I swear it's something like Oliver. Is it Oliver? I'm pretty sure it's Oliver. Basically they moved to this town with their son, and they both had lived there previously, and it's very much small town vibes, and they both lived there previously. They both had issues when they like not a great childhood or upbringing, and there were odd things happening in the town, and now that they're with their son and they're starting to realise that these weird things are happening to their son, who kind of makes friends with this guy. I can't remember if it's Nate. Yeah, there we go. So I think he's called Nate, the guy that he makes friends with. And so Nate keeps coming up to the house, and they kind of have suspicions about this boy, and they're kind of not really sure, and he kind of starts leading Oliver down this really bad path. And there's a lot of creepy stuff going on in this book, and there's also portals as well, so it's like a bit of like a sci-fi type of element to it as well, which is really cool. There are some portals that kind of have other worlds and parallel worlds as well, and it's just really, really clever, really good book. And it's the sort of book that, yeah, you want. I would say I would definitely recommend this one over this. I definitely preferred this one more. But yeah, I can see how both of them are very different. They're not your usual horror. You've got this one which has like sci-fi linked into it. This one which is possibly more like psychological thriller, but questioning whether it's supernatural, but then like really obvious signs of supernatural as well. So yeah, both really good options for horror, and both have the haunted house type of trope as well. So that's really good. So in the next episode, I will be reading the third book, which is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. If I just show you the front cover of it, can you see that? This is a book that I kind of saw everywhere when it came out as well. It came out in 2022. This is another haunted house one, but this one I kind of feel like it's Vera is a woman called Vera who's returning home to her estranged mother, and once she's in the house, she starts encountering flashbacks to her 13-year-old self, and she kind of sees that when she was a child, she was struggling through a difficult childhood, and it's all kind of coming back as flashbacks when she's in this house. So it's meant to be apparently quite disturbing, quite gruesome. It's got intensifying dread. It's also a dual timeline as well, so I quite like a dual timeline story. Obviously it's going to be flashbacking to when she's 13, and obviously it's like a mother-daughter type of horror. So that's the next book. That's what's going to be in the next episode of this series. I wasn't able to purchase it on a decent amount, on a decent price basically, but I have been able to pay for the library to get it into my local library. So I will be heading down once it's in. I sorted that out today, so as soon as I get the notification that that book is in, I will head down to the library and go and get it. So that second episode is probably going to be in a couple of weeks time, so it's not too long until the second episode. But yeah, that's going to be what we'll be reading next. Well, not next as in my next book that I'm reading, but in the next episode for this series. So I'm really looking forward to completing this series, like not waiting for the end to appear obviously, but I'm looking forward to all of the books that I'm going to be reading in this series, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye.